I heard a word mentioned many times, and that I want to kind of pull on that thread, and that is the word about alignment, right? And it's a little bit like this trifecta, right? It's alignment with sales, it's alignment with the customer, and it's alignment with the rest of the C-suite. And each one of them, each one of those alignment points is really different. And so I want to kind of like pull on that to say, how do we actually manage, what do we align to first, and how do we keep that alignment in place while your organizations are constantly changing? Because to your point, Amy and Julie, marketing is constantly changing. So let's tackle that, because I think that alignment has a great impact on what the team looks like and how the team can be successful. So who wants to start?
I'll go. Is that all right, Amy?
Sure.
All right. So I think there's two aspects of alignment that, as a marketing executive, you have to achieve before you even walk in the door. The first is with sales. Look, sales pays all of our bills. If sales isn't successful, the company will never be successful. If you go in as a marketing executive and you can't align with your sales counterparts, you will fail, pure and simple. And you have to figure out how to align with them. So the first thing you do before you step in the door is sit down and understand how sales operates at the company that you're joining. Who's the head of sales? Who are the influencers? What are their numbers? How are they measured? What does their compensation look like? How are the territories divided? What do they think marketing is doing well? What do they need from marketing? Where is marketing falling short? What do they think marketing is supposed to do? Where are the handoffs? Do they understand that marketing can't just throw leads over the fence and they can't just receive leads and do nothing with them? What's the level of sophistication and understanding? I like to sit down with the sales leader and map out the funnel, the sales and marketing funnel. There is no marketing funnel and a sales funnel. There's only one funnel, and it's a revenue funnel. To Amy's earlier point, marketing needs to drive revenue. The way we drive revenue is we create a larger pool that sales can take advantage of. So we have to be partners and align with sales. You must do that early on and often. I like to have at least weekly meetings and go through the funnel and make it really clear what the stages are, what's happening throughout, from the very top all the way through. What do we think is driving it? Forget about, it's not so much about attribution as what's happening. Attribution is a marketing problem, and yes, we need to have the analysis so we know where to spend our money, but that's not a conversation that sales is particularly interested in. They want to see what's coming in that's new, how is it turning into pipeline, and what can marketing do to help them drive it and accelerate the velocity through the funnel. So that's the first one, alignment with sales. The second is making sure that marketing at an executive level really has a seat at the table with the executive team and understand how the executive team, the CEO, the CFO, CIO if you have one, any other C-level executives, your corporate counsel, whoever's on your executive team, they need to understand, and you need to understand each other. So you have to sit down with each of them and understand what they think marketing's role is, particularly the CEO, and make sure that you have alignment around the role, the responsibilities, the focus areas, and the priorities. And Amy was talking earlier about having that clear role, responsibilities, and defined metrics. You have to do that, because otherwise marketing might have a lip service seat at the table, but not really be perceived as an equal caliber executive level function. So I think those are the two areas that I would cite: alignment with sales and alignment across the executive team, particularly with the CEO, around the priorities and what the role of marketing is at that company.
Yeah, Julie, I think you hit so many key points that I hope the listeners are really having a chance to kind of take in and internalize. And one of them made me smile a little bit, because earlier on in my career, I had a marketer once tell me, before you go into an organization, get the lay of the land of the sales organization first and foremost. And they said, assign these labels to the marketing to the sales leadership to get an assessment of what you're walking into. Their comment was, figure out who within the sales team are the strategists, who are the blamers, and who are the junkies. And as a marketer, it was really an eye-opener to think about what that means. And what that means is the strategist is the one that does recognize that it's a revenue funnel, that it's marketing and sales working together, that understand and recognize the trade-off between short-term lead generation and the value of brand building that drives revenue over time. And when I talk about brand building directly can increase demand by shifting the demand curve. It can increase margins by getting a premium price. It can reduce costs because your customer acquisition costs are lower, in particular from a sales footprint. And it can reduce risk because it puts competitive pressures in play that there's now barriers to entry. So you need to make sure that somewhere within the organization, in the sales organization and in the C-suite, that you have a strategist that understands how sales and marketing together come together to drive that revenue. Now, you'll always have the blamers. You'll have that no matter what. In fact, I had a CEO once said to me, if you were worried about what other people said, you got into the wrong department within this company because marketing's always going to get some blame. And that was another interesting eye-opener kind of point of view, which is the blamers are going to always say the reason why I didn't hit my numbers because somebody else didn't do something that I needed them to do. At the end of the day, you'll always have those detractors in any organization. Let them roll off your back. The junkies are the ones you've got to be aware of. Junkies are all about, give me leads, give me leads, give me leads, let me have more leads. Because that is a very short-term perspective. And while you constantly need to be focused on that bottom funnel productivity and ensuring that the marketing qualified leads turn into sales qualified leads, that turn into RFPs, that ultimately turn into wins, you need to make sure you balance that short-term need for demand gen, lead gen, with the strategic play to create the bottom line long-term impact for the company, which is around the strength of your brand. So from a standpoint of sales alignment, I find it's really important when I come in and try and assess the land using those three mindsets. When I think about the C-suite, it's kind of very similar from the standpoint of you are constantly needing to educate. Because at the end of the day, at the C-suite, those leaders all know their functional areas extremely well, and then they take on a generalist point of view for the business. They have not seen or been in a situation where their own discipline has fundamentally transformed like marketing has in the last 5 or 10 years. So the members of the C-suite brought up with a very specific perspective around what marketing is and how it works. The reality is that's just not marketing today. So as a CMO, as a VP of corporate marketing, as a senior director, wherever your title and your role is within the company, part of your responsibility is, in fact, to educate around how, as a company, today you can move beyond gut feel and you can use insights and knowledge and perspectives that you've never had before to guide your decision. You also have the opportunity to do A/B testing on virtually everything you do. So it is very much about this concept of the right metrics, agreed upon metrics, willingness to test and try, and invest both in the brand as well as in the demand short-term side. And then last, I must admit, we must never lose our eye on the customer, right? Customer success is paramount, understanding the customer voice, both from a standpoint of those who are your current customers, those who have chosen to go with competitions, and those that you've lost. Today, the reality is, and I'm sure we'll get into this more in this conversation, the role your customers or prior customers or detractors have in the market are paramount, and how you leverage either net promoter score or market awareness, your own internal insights, understanding your customer's point of view and ensuring that you have alignment with those customers are critical.
Wow, that's fabulous and fantastic. Thank you, Amy and Julie. It begs the question, though, right? We talked about alignment, and you talked about alignment, really understanding the sales organization and educating and also understanding the C-suite. And from the folks that are in the executive senior leadership positions, we get that. We need to sit across the table with the CIO, the CFO, the CRO, the VP sales, whatever that title is. How far down and into the marketing organizations does this alignment go, and how would you recommend to our audience that's listening to this that you actually mesh or weave the sales and the marketing organization together? Because it's not about just the top relationship. It really is all the way down to the very bottom of the organization. And that's hard for a lot of teams to go do. So what are some best practices?
Well, I'll start off something that I've done in each of my last 3 companies. They've been a Fortune 300 company public, a early stage public company, both in technology as well as a services company. And I think the best practices we put in place have worked well in all three of those. First and foremost, I really believe in the importance of bringing together the cross disciplines within marketing. And what I term it is, it's been a brand and revenue council, it's been a brand and demand council, but I create this council where across the discipline, everyone gets to have a sense and an understanding of what are the marketing and the company priorities. And we move beyond silos that way and look for ways to create greater impact with everything we do, because each of the disciplines know the major plays, campaigns, or focus. And the dialogue becomes, how do we collectively leverage the campaigns or the programs we're running across each of those areas and pop the inside up. Now, with that in mind, the best practice also is I actually bring the other departments into that brand and revenue council. I bring in legal in our current company, where they play a huge major role in our customer and client communications, as well as in some of the innovation around our products. So I brought legal in to actually present some of their ideas and early thinkings to the council so that there's that cross-coordination and discussion. I also believe in a best practice that whoever in marketing is traveling, we should have a set deck that we update every quarter that anyone in marketing can present whenever they're out in the field. So you really reach out and touch the employees throughout the organization and bring them closer to the mothership, if you might, around what are the priorities and the programs. Because as we all know, you can never repeat the core message, the value proposition, your brand identity message enough, because you're looking for every single one in that company to ultimately become that brand advocate.
So following on that, Julie, I have a question. How do you actually bake what Amy just said into the hiring and the recruiting and the managing process? I mean, do you bake it into KPIs for that position? I mean, how do you operationalize that so that it becomes part of the DNA?
I think I agree 100% with everything Amy said, and obviously she's got a great track record, has built some successful organizations for a variety of companies. There's a couple of things that I think you can do in the hiring process. One is really be clear about what the role and responsibilities are, the skills that are required, and how will success be measured, and for every role at the company. So you have to have clear job descriptions that document all of those things. I'm a big believer in documenting things. And if it's not written down somewhere in some sort of a document, you've got nothing to point to at the end of the day and say whether you were successful or not. It has to be recorded somewhere somehow. So that's important. Have a good job description that lists it out. And you can turn to that as a performance management tool when you have any issues or friction with some of the colleagues that we've been talking about aligning with and working with. And when you need to evaluate, you can look and say, well, maybe we missed that in that initial document. So the second thing you have to have is an onboarding approach and formula. And that can vary a lot by company. I like to do a first 90 days document for every single hire that I have, and it's custom for every single one of them. I take what's in that job description, and then based on what I know about the company that I'm with, regardless of size, and I've worked at companies as large as Oracle back in the early high growth stages, Salesforce.com, to small startups with tiny teams. You still have to do this. It doesn't matter. You've got to be clear with the people that you're hiring. So that onboarding document, it might be 3 or 4 pages, and it's a checklist, too, of all the things by category and function that I expect them to accomplish in their first 90 days. And that document serves as the basis for one-on-ones and management. And they go the first few days, one of the big things is meet all the people and stakeholders that they're going to be working with at every role. Meet those people, review what you think the responsibilities are based on the documentation you've gotten from your marketing leader, and make sure that they understand that. And if they have feedback that says, well, hey, you know, what I really was expecting from this role is a little different, bring that back so that it becomes a working document that we can be flexible about and adapt. So that first job description and spec, the onboarding document, and then the third thing I think of as a best practice, and these are tactics. Amy talked a lot about the core strategies, which I think are critical, but the tactics are important too, because things can break down. You can have a great strategy, but if you can't execute on it by having all the tactics in place, then it's not such a great strategy. So I like to build playbooks, and those playbooks, like the job descriptions and the onboarding documents, the playbooks need to be specific and customizable, and that's a framework for how sales and marketing works together. It's a tool created by marketing and delivered to sales, and we work through those playbooks. They identify the ideal customer profile, they identify the key targets, the partners, identify the reps by territory, the marketing roles and functions, and then each of the sales plays is summarized and documented in the playbook, and it can drive to a deeper understanding for the plays, the specific plays that sales needs. And then I like to include in the playbook, sort of my little bonus, is some of the key tasks and metrics that they have to record in your CRM systems, because I often find that marketing ends up in the role of, let's just call it, encouraging the right behavior on the part of sales in recording everything in your CRM system, because if the data isn't recorded properly, then your reporting and analytics aren't going to be accurate and actionable.
Yeah, well, that's great, Julie, because data really is so problematic, and we tend to overlook data.